Hello, guys. Then, if anyone doesn't know me, I'm Felipe Nevola, and we are here today to talk about Meteor and mobile native apps. Let me introduce a little bit about myself. I'm a Meteor user for many years. I'm also a developer, architect, or whatever you want to call it that works with code. And I'm also instructor. I like to teach how to do things in our programming world. I'm developer evangelist for Meteor. And I also am developing mobile native apps with Meteor since 2016. And Renan is also here. Renan was also in this first project that I did with Meteor. It was called Cavadinha. It was like a social network for people, for kids in Brazil that want to become a soccer player. And that was my official production native app with Meteor 4 years ago already. But today, as we are going to talk about native apps, I think it's useful just for context, like what are native apps? Then native apps is that idea that you can install apps from stores and you can have these apps running in your phone, and these apps can interact with your hardware in a better way. Not better in the sense that it will be faster or slower, because that depends on your code. I mean better because you can use like almost every feature from the phone. Probably on Android you can use every feature. From iOS, depends. Sometimes Apple's it's a little bit hard to provide access, or you need to justify a lot why you want to access one specific API. But in general, you can use everything that the phone has, and that's pretty good. And that's our native apps. Then we also have mobile web apps. Then mobile web apps is just a site or a website that can work in a phone. And that's it, basically. And you have hybrid apps. That's the mix between these two. Then you can use the web technologies, but you can also access the native API from iOS or from Android or whatever. Then that's what we are talking about here. This term, like hybrid applications, I don't see anybody using it anymore. But the idea is that you have a native application. How you build it using web technologies. Then that's the main idea. But you also can build, and I'm going to show you one example. You also can build native code and integrate it with your web technologies. And why I think this, in my opinion, is the best approach to develop apps today. It's because we don't have infinite money. Because if you have infinite money, you can hire a ton of developers and you can have one web team, one iOS team, one Android team, and you can build different apps. Then you can have another team for the backend, and then you can create a graphical endpoint or a DDP endpoint or a REST endpoint. But all these require a lot of work in different languages. And Meteor can do all these things together. And you just need to know how to use it and how to use it in the best way. But Meteor can deliver this. And that's very, very powerful. I was, of course, I don't remember what I was talking about this or what, I don't remember. No one?
Hybrid apps.
Okay. I don't think people are using these terms nowadays, at least I don't see it, but the idea is that you have the native components and also the web technologies, and you can develop your own integrations with native code. Then it's really powerful. I think I was talking about like the teams, that you don't need to have multiple teams. Then you can have just one team or multiple teams, but they don't need to know a lot of different languages. They can just know JavaScript and they can develop all the parts of your application. And that's a huge benefit. And in the past, I already had like native teams when I was leading many teams in a company. And one team was iOS, one team was Android, but it was crazy. It was a mess. It was very hard to sync and very hard to release in the same time. It was almost impossible. Anyway, and then let's talk about Meteor. And then we can just see the code. But Meteor, how Meteor does that, how Meteor create hybrid applications. Meteor used the Cordova. Cordova in the past was called PhoneGap. I think PhoneGap still exists. It's like the project for Adobe. But Cordova is open source, is inside Apache right now. And you have the client. that you can send command line instructions. And Meteor uses this to create your Cordova project, to install your plugins. And you also have Cordova iOS and Cordova Android. These are the main components that Meteor uses to provide you this experience. We also have here a plugin that's really important for Meteor to work as expected on native. That this plugin is the one that creates the bridge between your web code and your native code. And it's also responsible for update your code when you publish a new change to the web. And that's really powerful because you can replace the code that you have in the native apps without waiting the approval in the stores. Of course, you cannot release a new feature because that's against the rules of the stores, but you can release hot code, hot fixes, and or maybe even small features if they don't know it. But it's really powerful because when you're really developing native apps, you need to wait maybe 1 day, 2 days to have an approval. And if you have a critical bug, you don't have any way around. And with this technology, you can do this. And Meteor has a nice way to try to avoid conflicts, but you can also override this conflict. I'm going to show how I do it. And you can also use a package like Reloader. That's a fork from a fork from a fork that I have. That is a way that you can control a little bit better when you want your native app to reload or when you want your native app to get this code from the hot code push. Okay, I am also going to talk a little bit about startup time, but I prefer to do this showing code instead of just saying these words here, dynamic imports, nested imports. Like on every call that I have, I still see people in the Meteor community that doesn't know how to use or doesn't know it exists, like nested import. And nested import is only supported in Meteor, and it's a pretty cool feature that was implemented by Benjamin, but we can talk about this in a few minutes. Before I jump into the code and start to show a few parts of the app, any questions? No? You can say at least, no, I don't have any question.
No questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to show most of the time like two apps here. Like one app is called BMark, is this one. I'm just show the app so you know when I explain what I'm talking about. And also BMark I think is running on my iPod right now. That's already a first tip here. Like if you want to share your iPhone, your iPad or whatever, this is my iPod, sorry, I said iPad. If you want to share yours, this is not a screen, like I can't click here. It's just a video from my screen that I'm touching the device here, but it's a real device. It's not a fake app. And you can do this, just go in here and start a new movie. And then you can select your iPod or your iPhone as a source. That can be a good way for you to present to your clients or to other developers. Then you can show in your main screen and you can just use here, okay? That's one way. And also for Android, the only solution that I know is Visor. Visor is a paid solution if you want to use all the features, but you can use this version that is a little bit bad, the UI, the image, they reduce the quality of the image, but you can also see your apps here and you can present your app and you can also open BMark here. Then we can have both working. And you can also see like how fast BMark boot in a phone. And that's pretty important for hybrid applications, because if your app is too slow, then maybe you can cause a bad experience for your users. Okay, but let me drag this to the other screen that I have here. Any questions about how to share your device screen on the computer? No? You're too quiet, guys. That's not a talk. Like the idea here is not that I speak and you listen. The idea here is to have a conversation about this.
Yeah, but my daughter is practicing violin. That's a problem.
Okay, but that's fine. You can talk whatever when you want. Okay, then let's see a little bit about this code here. Like, first of all, like you don't want to load all your code like when you are starting your application, because that can bring a little bit down your boot speed, because the JavaScript needs to be parsed and needs to be evaluated, and in some phones that's not so fast to do. Then I'm using React here, but you can use with any other framework. I will start with this part, then I can go to the native part, because this part is fast to explain. Then what I do usually in my projects, I just select a few components that are really important to me, and I put here as a nested import. And that's good, because then your app can start, and just when the routes needs to be rendered, these files are going to be evaluated. You don't need to evaluate these files before your app already started, and maybe you can already show a skeleton, or you can show some placeholders. And the other files, I am not doing nested import, but that's not for the native app, because the native app Meteor does not use dynamic imports, but that's important for PWA or for your website. Then you can also deliver a lot of code here using lazy from React. Like if you are using another framework, then you need to learn how to dynamic load modules in the other framework. But usually, like with this combination, like this part here, the nested import to defer evaluating this code uh, uh, as much as you can. And also this approach here to not download all the code, that's not applied in Cordova, just to be specific here, like that's important for PWAs and your website. But with these two approaches, you are able to speed up a lot how fast your app can render. And you can also do this in a more deep way. I'm going to show just a part, like just the one idea that you can create. Like I think I can show this code, it's fine. Like we have this code here that you can, that's another app from Pathable, but the idea here is just to present you this. Like you can even create a map with a bunch of files that you have, and you can have nested import inside a map. Then why this is useful? Because you don't need to evaluate, like in this case, it's a widget, until you need this widget. Then you can evaluate all the other code, but these widgets, you're going to evaluate just when the user opens this exact page. Then it's a very nice way that, because you can scale your code as much as you want, but that's not going to affect at all your startup time. And that's very important. Otherwise, you start your project running fast, and then after a few months, your app will be very slow and very laggy, because it needs to load a lot of JavaScript. And there is no way around. Like Meteor is good, because Meteor has nested imports. This is nested import. Sorry, I think I didn't say that, but this is nested import. You can import using Meteor on any level, but you can do this with other compilers. And this is really, really powerful for low-end devices, that you can defer the evaluation of code. And what I was saying, that there is no way around this with JavaScript, because JavaScript is not a ahead of time compiled language. Then you need to compile, you need to parse the files when you are going to execute the files. There is no way to send the binary, or to send like bytecode, like in Java, or like in Flutter that you have Dart, and Dart has both. Dart has ahead time of compilation and also just-in-time compilation. In JavaScript, you just have just-in-time compilation. Then nested imports are really, really powerful feature, and is the only solution that I know for JavaScript applications to be able to have the code, but not load and evaluate the code in the initialization phase of your app. Is it clear like why I'm using like nested imports here? You can even see this in action in a few minutes if you want. I can show in the Chrome profiler what's happening, like when these codes are going to be evaluated or not. But the idea is clear, how to speed up your boot time.
Mm-hmm. I think, isn't dynamic imports also able to help with that?
Yeah, but as far as I remember, in Cordova, Meteor is not considering this as a dynamic import. It's probably compiling this to a nested import as well.
Okay.
Because the idea is like, why are you going to deliver your code later if your code is going to go to the store and then the user is going to download your code from the store. Then I'm almost sure that when you compile for Cordova, the dynamic modules are already included in your code.
Yeah, it's included in the bundle as far as I know too. I think that's a good point you would say, because a lot of Cordova apps get the fame of being slow and all the thing, but it's just because you try to load 10 megabytes of JavaScript at the initial load, and no web view can handle that. So part of the fame of Cordova apps mostly because of that writing code.
Yeah, and in the past, before I used this approach, it was really, really hard to decrease from like 5, 6 seconds. Because if you have a lot of code and you need to evaluate all this code, like there is no way to save this time. You need to evaluate. Then the only way that I know is to use nested import. And that's why I always say like Meteor is in a very good and unique position to create this kind of apps, because the other compilers like Webpack, Rollup, any other compiler that I know, it's not supporting nested import. Then it's like it's impossible. Or you need to use dynamic imports and you need to download later, but that can also be bad for your users if their internet is bad, or if they don't have internet, your app is just not going to work. And this is, we have a good balance. You can have the code, but you can evaluate the code just later. That's, I think, is the most important trick that I do to load fast. And another important trick that you can do, let me try to show this here, is the use of skeleton. Skeletons are not going to make your app faster, but the experience for the user will be like your app is faster. Let me try to close this and open again. This is a very, very old iPod. Then it takes like 2 or 3 seconds to load. And I mean, development is a little bit slower. I don't know if it's running here yet. Oh, sorry. Let me close and open again.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in New York, and it was incredibly fast.
Yeah, because this iPod is like, it's very, very, very old. Like nobody has this nowadays. I can't see the skeleton here because the UI. Let me try to show on my Android device. Let me close this. Let's see if you can see the skeleton. I will use the version, the production version, then the server is fire. Yeah, can you see? It's pretty, that's like a font that's good enough. But then what I want to show is like the skeleton. If I click here in this burger place, I show the skeletons the first time, then I return to the page. I already have the data there, then I don't show the skeleton. And like I'm using graphical here, but you could use in any technology. And it's like right now, it's everything is just click and see it. You see first time, you see the skeleton, but if I return to the same store, I don't see the skeleton anymore. Then like this is very powerful. And if I access some like features for the first time, let me see like influencers. Like I don't have any influencers in this city. That let me change the city. Like it's the first time that I'm loading a lot of code here because of the nested imports, but it's fast because then I'm just evaluating a little chunks of code and not all the code in the same time. And then you can see, again, a lot of stores. When I open the first time, I see the skeleton. This store just has 2 categories, but then when I return, it's fast enough, and then I can open another store. Like this skeleton idea, always your user are going to see the next page when you tap. Then the user can feel that your app is responding fast, and it feels like the code is in the phone. Because when every time the user clicks something or taps something, they need to wait. It does not feel native because it needs to wait for all the interactions. But when the codes are right there and you can put the skeletons, even if the data is not there, then you can provide this better experience for your user because everything is almost immediate. And then you can put even animations and you can play around a little bit more. But that are the 2 tricks that I use. Also, you can use animation. I have another app here to show you that is still in development, but this app is a little bit more fancy. it's not done yet, like the design is not done yet, and I don't know my password, I think. I don't know my password. No, I know my password. Then we are using, I don't know if you can see here because my machine is pretty fast, but we are using animations here, but I think it's too fast, you can see it. Yeah, I think we need to slow down the animations, but these squares here, we are using Meteor UI, and then these squares, they are like animating, they are growing in the UI, but I think we need to, yeah, we need to put something to make this UI a little bit slower, but also see like some elements that are important. I am not showing the scroll that I have here because usually native apps, you don't show scrolls. And I may also like have this is me, this bottom bar here that is fixed, then it's easy for the user to tap there. Then you need to think like in a different way. If you just get your desktop version and you just put inside the Cordova and just run it, it's not going to be like as native as it could be. You need to think as an user in a phone, use the thumbs to navigate. And that's what we are doing this app as well. And you can, it's not done yet because of that you saw the image, but you can have this, like the sliders here, you can upload the images, and then if you are in the phone, you can also provide a different experience for your user. Like you can have the native code to accept the permissions, and then we have all this here, and then they can use the files from the library, the local library from the phone, and it's pretty cool. Anyway, let me show a little bit of the code. Do you have any questions about this, like the skeleton approach? Are you using skeleton in your app? Hello.
Yeah, sort of like placeholders.
But always you are showing the placeholders, or only when the user is accessing this resource for the first time?
Well, we're certainly not doing it as much as you're doing it here. It's more just like spinners, you know, like loading spinners kind of thing. It's not as slick.
Yeah, because the idea here, maybe when you see it, think, oh, that's very complicated to do, but it's not that hard. Like we are using here just the cache from Apollo, and you can use from Mongo, from whatever. And then I just make a few decisions here in this hook. Then I see like if I'm loading or if my result is undefined, because GraphQL first returns undefined when it's loading, and then later it returns null if it's really null. Then I know that I need to show the skeleton because I don't have any data available yet, but maybe I will have data. Then I just return in the name that the user asked. And if there is no data, like it's not a skeleton and the result is still empty, then I know for sure, like this is an empty list, then I can display a message, because it makes no sense also to show a skeleton when you don't have data, because the user will start to think that the data is coming. And with this, like this 5-6 lines hooked here, you can create all this approach. Like if you see here, like all the pages are using exactly the same idea. And with this, we can create this experience. Like here to show the promotions, like the offers, like you get, if you don't have data here, you probably have an if and a return here, and you don't return it. In this case, we don't return the component because you don't want to show when you have no data. But also you can see probably, oh, in this case, we don't have it. Let me show another one that we really have the skeleton. This one, or you have it. Then if you have the show skeleton as true, we just return the skeleton from this component here. Can you see? Just like the skeleton. And if the no data, we just return no data. Then I think the good part about this is that we isolate when you do what, just in this file here. And then you just do simple conditions like, oh, it's skeleton, return it. And you can apply this in many layers. Like you can change small labels inside a component when it's loading. Like this component here, like we always show like offers, it's offers, but I don't know how many products I have in offer. But I always show this header here, but then I get this number later. then you can do these small optimizations with your skeleton as well. Then the user is not realizing that we are not getting the data that fast. But let's talk about native. Then let's open the mobile. Okay, this is my mobile config. Then we have a lot of things here. One thing that I do, that is a little bit a workaround. I also exposing my apps, the mobile version and also the native, the web version. Then it's easier for us when you need to fix bugs. Let me show you this. Then I have here the version, that's the web version, and I have here the store version. And are you doing this, like getting different versions?
No, we do it for the Electron desktop app that we have, but it would be good to have it for the mobile.
Yeah, what do we do? Let me open this about page. Like we have the version in the web is just like a JavaScript file that our deploy scripts write to this file. Then we are always replacing this. And we also have the version from the store using a Cordova plugin. That is this app version plugin that we have in our Cordova plugins file, like the app version. And then you just need to, it gets injected here. That's a bad part about Cordova. Most of the plugins are just using global variables, but it works. Then you need to get the version here. Then if you are in Cordova, you get the version. If you're not, you get this. Then if your user open a bug, at least you can know like, okay, he's using a version that was hot code pushed. He's not updating the stores because maybe a plugin is not there because you update the plugin and the user has a different version. And then that's very useful for the bug. Then that's the first part here. It's just a way to calculate the build number dynamically, but you don't need to do that if you don't want to. But we just calculate and you assign to this object here later. We also have this idea of switch case to know exactly what app we are running. If you look to my phone, I probably have more than one bmark here. Let me. Yeah, can you see here? I have 2 bmarks here, and I have 2 archives here as well, because I just changed the variable, and then I can build different. It's the same app, the same code, but I can build with different names. And then I can run multiple apps, multiple environments, and I can even run different apps if I want. Like this is one example. Like I can have a white label version of my application, and I can just change the native app. Then I can deploy the same code using a different ID. And that's what Pathbull is using to produce native apps like every week for different clients. And the apps are completely different, but they are built using the same source code. And that's also really powerful and hard to do with different technologies. If you have any questions, just ask the questions. I will go over like line by line here, try to explain what I'm doing. But if you have questions, please ask. We also have here some settings like the background color, the stats bar color. Usually like try to match your header, then it looks nicer in the phone. Also the content in the style bar, if it's going to be like black or white, it depends on the other color. And you can always find these informations on Cordova page. You have the plugin that we are using, and then you can see the values here. It's not, the docs are not perfect, but these main components, usually they are up to date. Then you can at least understand what you need to do. There is also this error that is not a problem for Meteor, but sometimes the Cordova have this problem. And if you don't do this on Android, your user are going to see a gray pop-up saying that like local hosts and the port and some error. Then it's good to just increase the startup time, because if for some reason Cordova is hanging to start, you're not going to get this ugly message, or you are going to get, but just after a lot of milliseconds here. And then that's also useful to have. Even in bmark, I didn't have this until like 2 months ago. And that was a problem. Sometimes users were complaining like, oh, I'm just seeing this cannot connect. And then we change this, just applying these values here. Are you using these values? Anyone?
We're not, no.
No. And did you have this complaint already? I think that is a.
Not yet.
I think if you open this issue here, I don't know.
I had this problem, but I didn't know the solution yet. I'll try applying it.
Yeah, like this there. Sometimes
Yeah,
you
exactly.
change the URL here, but it's always a very ugly pop-up.
And it only happens after if the app hasn't loaded in 5 seconds.
Yeah. At least because in the first app that I did with Meteor Cavadinha, I used this and I didn't have this problem. And after I added this to be marked like 2 months ago, I didn't have this problem again. Then I think this timeout really solves the issue.
And maybe it's worth to add to the default configuration.
Yeah. And most of the things here, we should improve it on Meteor. And that's something that we need to work on. Also, I mentioned the other live, but we have a different audience now. Most of the code that I'm showing, it's also here. This is a branch yet, but I'm working this example with Cordova inside Meteor. And then I'm writing like a very extensive doc here, how to create your app on Apple, how to create your app on Android, how to do everything. Like it's a little bit boring, but mobile development is a little bit boring, at least for me. And then we need to follow all these steps, and we are going to automatize as much steps as you can. But for now, if you just follow these instructions here, you should be able to deliver your app.
I think that's wonderful. I think Cordova is really a wonderful fit for Meteor. So having this will be really great.
Yeah, this is what I'm using. Like, I'm not a native developer. Renan is a native developer. Then every time I forgot how to do stuff. Then because of that, I have this huge checklist here. Then I can just go here and execute step by step.
Yeah, we have one
I
for
even
our
don't know
company
what
too.
I'm doing because I did like 2 years ago.
Do you have something to automate the taking of screenshots?
Yes,
we have
yeah,
on
Pathball has that, and you should create a community version. But Pathball has like on Pathball, the only step that's not automatic right now is to publish the Android version for the first time. Everything else, you can ask anything, is automatic.
Exactly. Just for you to know, we are using Puppeteer to take some screenshots and then using Fastlane to frame it. So we do a lot of Fastlane too.
I will show my Fastlane script that I use to update my apps in a moment as well.
Good. Yeah, we used Fastlane for the initial. I'm not sure we've had to do it again. It was a real pain though.
Yeah, it's a mess. Here is go ahead. Sorry,
before I forget, could you talk a little bit more about how you increment your build steps? Is it just manual every time you deploy to production?
No, what I'm doing now, let me open my package. Oh, sorry, I lost my cursor. Package JSON here. I have this script that's called update app version. And this script is a post version command. Then I don't know if you use this, but I use this command here to generate a new release. That's the command. And as I have this workaround to change the code and apply these versions, then I have this no git tag version here because I will publish the tag in my own command. But that's very simple. I'll show you the command. But that's what starts the process. And then I get here, it will do whatever NPM version does. That's just generates the new version. If it's a patch, if it's a minor, if it's a major. And then I will run this update app version. That's just like a very dirty trick. I'm just writing the version to that file that I show you, this file here, like this version file, and also to mobile config. I could do this in a better way. I could have like a utility to execute this. And then when I finish this, I commit these chains, and I also push this tag manually. And this is the trick to get the version from the package here. Then always this version is getting updated automatically. And on this, I can push the tag in the end, and that's it. And I calculate the build version based on this value. Then I run this process. I have my tag on Git that I think it's very important for every release to have a tag. Then I have a tag on Git with this content. And then I just get this and I execute this simple code here to calculate the next build number.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's just a little bit hacky. We should create like something like npm next version, and maybe have some standards here to where to write these versions. Maybe have a special file to store this version number. But for the script here,
you kind of can get as complicated as you want, because on Pathball, for example, we get the version from the Play Store and also from the App Store, and then we get the higher value, and then we sum one to it, because we can get some accounts on Apple that already has build numbers, and we have to iterate on it. So I think build numbers can get as complicated as you want. But yeah, I think just getting the version most of the times it works.
Yep. Yeah, in this case, I have full control of my apps, but in some cases, in Pathball's case, the client already have an app. Then you need to sync with whatever is in the store from the past. Then it's a bit different. Okay, but that's what I do. And I also have here like this universal link configuration that I think is the next part here. Yeah. First, just to mention this, like this is not a native thing. It's just that I have this white label that I can build different apps from the same source code. Then based on this value here, I get from my codes. Then I know like I'm building bmark.com, the marketplace, or am I building just for a specific restaurant? Then that's the idea with these variables here, but it's not important like in general. This one is important, is the way that I create the configuration for push notifications. I think I can show this now. I think it's better. Then I show universal link later. Then like for push notifications, I'm using OneSignal. I already showed this code in the previous conference call because people asked to see it, but I can show again here. I think this is the main one. This code is not beautiful, but I don't know how to write it in a better way because Cordova plugins are kind of messy, and also the API from OneSignal is also very weird. I don't know why they did like this, but the idea here is when you have your app startup, and in my case, I just send push notifications for users that are authenticated. Then I run this on login because I don't need to run for users that are not authenticated. And then I get this code executed, and this code is going to register like callbacks for OneSignal. And then I get my API ID from OneSignal. That was this variable here, okay? If I'm going too fast, please let me know. And then you get this API ID here. We have some settings like the log level from OneSignal. This is very important, like what's going to happen when the user click in your notification. Because if you don't do this, like the notifications are kind of useless because the user, you just warn the user, but he needs to figure out how to go to the proper place in your app. In this way, you can inject this field. I'm injecting this field here. When I send the push, and then I know exactly where I need to send this user, and then I'm just using like React code here to go to the specific route that I need. And that's also boilerplate from Cordova, from OneSignal plugin. That's, I don't know, it's not good for me, but it's the way that you have it. And that part is also not very good because you need to get this value from this callback. But then I have another processing Meteor to authenticate the user. Then what I'm doing, I just write this in a global variable, and then on login, That was the code that I was showing before. I just sent this player ID here, calling this function. But you can probably stop to think about this code and try to improve a little bit the flow here. But that's the idea. On startup, I put the hooks, and on login, I send the player if I have a player ID here. Player ID is the name that one signal gives to the identifier of each device. Then every device, they are going to produce one player ID. And then you need to save this in your database. And that's what I'm doing. I'm sending using a Meteor method, because even I'm using GraphQL, when I don't need this data back on my GraphQL cache with Apollo, I just use Meteor methods, because Meteor methods are so much better in terms of speed and speed to write this code. And then it's a very simple code. I'm just adding this player ID to my database, and then I can send these messages later. And just to show like how I send the message, I have this code here to send push notifications using OneSignal's REST API. And then we need to put the token here, your credentials. And here is the part that I have the route here that I encode as this web URL. I think it's for web push, because we are using Cordova for web push and for mobile push. And then web push, you need to set this variable here. And for mobile push, we are using the one that I show you. That is the data.additional, payload additional data route. And this is inside this data variable here. And that's it. Then you just call a post, and that's it. Your notification is going to be created on OneSignal, and OneSignal is going to send you back. I'm not going to explain here how to configure OneSignal, because I have the step-by-step here. Even this part that I'm like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Then you can just read here. Even how to customize the icon for Android. Sometimes I receive push notifications from some apps on Android. They don't have a custom icon. It's because you need to configure your custom icon. For iOS, that's automatically. You just get the icon from the application. But for Android, you need to configure this. Then you need to do these steps as well. And that's also something right now that you can improve on Meteor, because right now we don't have a way for Meteor to read this asset. And then we need to use the Cordova build override. I don't know if you know that, but that's a very old Meteor feature that you can put anything inside this folder. And after Meteor finishes to build your app, it's going to just paste this folder inside your Cordova project. Then it's a nice way to, as a fallback, but for this specific case that everybody using push should do, we should have a better way to handle how to set this asset. But there is the step-by-steps here as well.
I think we did the same when, if you don't do that, I think the push notification on Android is like a gray box or something.
Yeah, at least on my phone, it's just like a generic bell, but the user will have no idea before they open the notification, which notification, from which app this notification is. Then it's pretty bad. And I think in all the Androids, you'll see just like a gray square. Okay, that's the push. Like push is complicated because you have a lot of components, but the code itself is just a few lines of code here and just a few lines of code here. But you need to know what you're doing, because it's not that simple. But this guide, if you read carefully, like line by line, you're probably going to do this without any error in the first try. Okay, also universal link. That's a very important point for applications, because when you click in a link for YouTube, you receive YouTube app, right? When you click a link for like Facebook, you open Facebook. And the user kind of expect that when you click a link from your app, like BMark, it expects to open the app, not the website. And the feature for Android, I think it's called Deep Link, but for Apple, it's called Universal Link. And then you need to configure this, otherwise your app is not going to be able to return the user to the right spot. Then, like, this is the universal link. There is a old way to do this that's called scheme, but I don't think is the proper way anymore. Like, universal link is just that if a user clicking bmark.com on their phone, they're going to open the app. The schema or scheme, I don't remember the word, but it's like bmark, it's like this, like bmark column / and then you put something here. It's like a custom HTTP for your application. I think this is still supported, but the link, it's more useful because and more powerful because you can just send to anybody. Then if the user does not have your app, it's going to just open in the navigator. Then I think it's a better idea. I'm also going to show later how to configure in a proper way to have like the banner, the native banner. When you open the website, then the native banner, you prompt the user to install the native app. And if I'm not mistaken, you need to have universal links for that to work as well. But the universal link, we have the explanation here, how to configure, I believe. Yeah, you need to enable this associated domain, otherwise it's not going to work. Then you need to enable this. And then you also need to have something that's really boring for Apple. That's the app site association. Then your app backend needs to return in the proper format a JSON. Then Apple will understand that these two are connected. I have even a package to make your life a little bit easier, but it's a very short code. But I want to have a lot of packages, then I don't need to think about this stuff anymore. I can just get the app, the package, and configure the package. Then I have the universal links package here. And you have also the explanation here, how to use it, what you need to configure, like you need to enable this, and then you can configure like this, and that's it. Like you just put this and you have a REST endpoint that's going to return your app. And bmark is a little bit different. Again, as I have a white label version of bmark, then I need to respond what app is based on the domain that's requesting. Then it's a little bit different, but you can also use the package to at least don't need to understand the format that Apple is expecting. Like the format's not very hard. If you go here, 5,000, like this is the format that Apple is expecting. You can also put like some paths here because maybe you don't want to handle all the paths in the same application, but that's usually what you want to use. Are you using universal links?
We do, yeah. We actually ran into an issue with the query string. I was wondering if you have run into any issues with that, where if they click a link, like from a text message, we got it to open the app, but if the link had a query string, that part of it wouldn't come through to the app. But if we kind of embedded it in the URL, then it would work. So we never really solved it. We just changed it all to URL based.
Yeah, I don't remember if I use with query.
Like Apple says that they support the query string, but we just couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, because that's my code to handle. It's in the same place that I handle the Open Cordova, the Open notification. I also handle in a very similar way. But let me see. No, I don't think I have. But maybe it's because I don't have any use case. But maybe that's going to break. Are you using this plugin as well? The File Manager Cordova plugin?
I don't think so. Let me check what we're using.
This is even a fork from Pathbot that I'm using here because we have a lot of forks there.
We're using one called Cordova Universal Plugin Fixed or something.
Yeah, that's something that I'm doing, like creating, instead of creating these forks and keep this as a fork and without publishing versions using hashes, I'm starting to publish all these forks under my domain, like Quav, and then I will start to have all these in the same place, like I have here already, a lot of packages here. Then at least you don't need to get a lot of different plugins from different places. And as I use these plugins, and I'm going to keep the idea is to keep them up to date. It will be better for everybody. But let me return here. because mobile is not easy. I still have a few things to explain. Okay, this I think is just a timeout. That's not, I don't think that's required, but that's just good to have more time if you have some issues, but I don't think you need that in general. Also, if you want to open external links, you should put something here. Usually, I just allow everything, but in some case, you need to also change a setting on iOS. I think one guy, but I don't know if the guy is here, was having issues with going to external links with Cordova. And for sure, I have this figured out, but I need to understand what is the case. But I also have a few like allows here that are some URLs that I know for sure that are going to be called. This is the part that Meteor supports to transfer the assets. Then you just put the place here in your Meteor project, and then Meteor is going to copy to the proper place in the other side. Honestly, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, because it's hard to keep you up to date because they add new sizes, and maybe it's better to use something like Cordova override and just copy the same structure. But for now, we have this. I don't know if it's a good idea to just keep adding or have a new way to define these files. The same from the launch screens. And that's also a little bit tricky for iOS, because now the iOS uses just like one file, at least if you want, you just need to use one file for a splash screen. And then you can use the edge of the phones. It's like crazy because Apple uses the splash screen size to define if your app is ready to use the edge of these new phones that have these weird edges. And then that's the way that I'm doing this. I'm just configuring specifically for iOS directly here and not using the Meteor setup way. Are you doing like this?
Yeah, I think so. Let me check.
But are your app is going to the edge, or your app is leaving a bar, like a blank bar in the top and in the bottom for new phones?
Yeah, we do it the same way that you do.
Okay. Here we also can set like the minimum, the target, SDK. Renan maybe can explain, but I think in the past it was like 27, but now it's better to be 29. Maybe we should update also in the default values. Do you remember why it's better
it's now up to date, but it wasn't, so that's why that setting was like that.
But we don't need this anymore?
Yeah, we probably don't. I don't know on top of my head, but we probably don't need that because Cordova is now up to date, but it wasn't.
I think I had to update this after we update Cordova, but I'm not sure. But maybe we still need to update something on Meteor. Oh, that's another setting for universal link that you also need to put here. And this is just because you are using the GPS to get the user location, then you need to provide these messages. Otherwise, Apple is going to reject your app. This is just for hot code push to work on the simulator for Android, I guess. I think even Ruiter that was here. I don't know if Ruiter is still here in this call. Yeah, Ruiter is still here.
Yes,
Is that right, Ruiter?
Yeah, you're gonna need this to allow the hot code push functionality to work on Android. Yeah, but I never tested it in iOS, so I think it's
I
exclusively
think for iOS it
on
works.
Android.
And also we have some configurations here. Maybe we can even explain. This part's not covered in the document, but like how to do the social login in the native way with Apple, because now we have the Apple ID that's required. If you have like Facebook or Google or whatever, you need to also have Apple ID. It's a new rule from Apple. Then we have this already working on BMark as well. But I don't know if I extend to this topic, it's going to be a long life. But that's also possible and doable. And I think we have a package here. No? I thought we have a pack here for Apple authentication. But anyway, we are working on this as well. Any questions so far?
Just a couple comments. If you scroll back down to the bottom. Yeah, the clear text, I think that's only for getting hot code push working on like local development.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can also do it if you have your own SSL, like with a proxy. But also we use Face ID, and yeah, Apple is pretty strict about that description thing. Like it'll silently fail if you don't include one of those description edit configs.
Yeah, Apple is amazing. Always.
So one thing I see you're not using yet is SSO, which when you do enterprise integrations, they all require that. And that is a super pain in the butt for Cordova.
But I'm not using SSL where?
SSO, single sign-on.
Oh, okay, SSO. Okay, yeah, no, I'm not using.
Yeah, that's another level of pain.
Okay, any other comment? I see now that Ali is always here. Hello, Ali.
Yeah, hi. I'm just observing, so this is a lot of new stuff for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the fun part, like how to at least update your apps in a more, I don't know how to say that, but in a better way, but sometimes it's also going to fail. Like last week, I think because of the annual conference of Apple, they broke everything with the updates for Fastlane as well. And the guy was working as crazy to fix all the issues. I think yesterday he released the final version, but I was
It
using
broke again. They released release Kate Day 3, and then it broke again, and he fixed it, and then it broke. Apple is crazy those times.
Yeah, I'm using like, at least it worked like 1 week ago, this release candidate here. But
It's working now. Yeah, no, it is.
it's working, okay. But like this is a lot of boilerplate code, and I think we can do better what I'm doing here. I think it's a little bit verbose that we don't need to be like this. But I just want to have this recorded as well, because maybe some people are struggling or thinking that like it's impossible. It's not good, it's not easy, but it's not impossible to do it. Like the first part that I would like to show is like how the release process works. I already showed the version, but what I usually do, like I check out master, then I merge my changes to master, and I didn't push to my web application yet. Like I use Jenkins. I didn't publish my code with Jenkins on Galaxy, but I'm going to do this in the end. Then I check if my migrations are okay in the database. Then I push the code to master, but not to Galaxy yet. Then I update my release notes in this file for Android. I need to create a file with the version number. Like this version number is the same number that is in, it's called build number here. Usually I'm pretty lazy, then I copy this on Chrome console and I let Chrome to do the math because I don't want to do this math. That's what I do. And I also need to put some release notes for iOS if I want. The iOS note goes to in this key on my Fastlane file that I'm going to show in a little bit. And if you have like big changes, Apple can reject your app just because your release note's not clear enough or it's not saying what it's updating. Then I also commit my release note changes. Then I run the process that I explained it when Adrian asked about my version, how I update my versions. It's a script using npm version. Then I keep in the same branch because now I have a tag. Then that's the tag that I want to publish to my web server, that's Galaxy, to my Android in the Google Play, and also to iOS on App Store. Then I keep in the same tag. And that's important because if you publish different tags, We can talk about hot code push after this topic. Then the hot code push is going to trigger for your users, even if they have the app installed. And that's a bad experience because maybe you're not delivering any feature using the hot code push, but the user will open your app and then your app is going to refresh, or your app is going to refresh after 5 minutes. It depends if you are how you are handling the reload, but that can be a bad experience. Then I always try to release a app and also release the apps in the same day at least. Then I go to this production folder that I have, and I have a few scripts. I have one just to build the app. Just to build, I need to put some marks here later. Don't worry, I'll do that after the video. Like there is a password here, but if you are watching the recorded version, the password is not here anymore. It's magic. And then you also have this trick here. It's about hot code push. In our case here on BMark, we don't care about versions and plugins. Then we are always using the same hash here to build the app and to publish the app. If you see my deploy script, you are going to see that I have the same hash in my deploy script as well. This is just a optimization, this disable optimistic cache, because you don't need cache because you are just deploying the app, you're building the app. But this is to disable any restrictions from hot code push. What happens with this setting, like I can put just 1 and 1 here, just to be always the same. And then if it's always the same, every time you Meteor, you checking the server, can I update? And then it will always be allowed. Then we can even release a hot code push between 2 different versions of Meteor. Of course, that can be a problem because maybe your server is not compatible with your client or some plugins that you change. But at least it's a way that you don't break your hot code push never. You can always publish new versions. But you need to be aware that when you publish a new plugin, maybe your clients are not with this plugin there. Then you need to do extra checks in your code. But I'm using this approach for at least 1 year, and I think it's better to just try to guess if the hot code push is going to work or not, if you update your plugin or a Meteor version. It has been working for us really well this way. But that's the idea here. And then I also, after I open Xcode, I'm not using this right now because I'm going to show next that I'm just using Fastlane to publish it. But if you're not using Fastlane, maybe you want to publish using Xcode. Then because of that, I'm opening the Xcode here. And I'm also preparing my app to be delivered on Android. Then I'm also signing my app here. Maybe this can be done by Fastlane as well, but it's just a few commands that you need to run. I think it's okay to run like this. And as I said, my app is a white label app. Because of that, I have Apple App ID and all these variables here. But if you just are always building the same app, you don't need to have these as variables. And that's this step. And we are ready to publish to iOS, ready to publish to Android, and ready to publish. In my case, I'm using Jenkins. Jenkins is just a CI. And if you open publish iOS, it's a very short script. I'm also going to hide this later. And then you have a few settings here, and I have a few passwords here, and that's it. Then we are going to publish your app to App Store. And we have the same here for Android. As always, Android is a little bit easier. Then we also publish this. This is the track that you want to publish. If you want to have multiple tracks, internal testing, beta, alpha, you can also change here. And that's it. On Fastlane, I don't think it's worth to go like line by line here because it's just a file with a bunch of configurations, but I'm going to post this file in this repo. I think it's not here yet. Let me see. I don't think it's here. Yeah, it's not here yet, but I'm going to update later. And because I know there is some issues here that I don't need to repeat. Like I think the provision profile like this, I'm repeating in different places. And then I would like to improve a little bit more. I'm not using this version anymore because now Meteor is running Swift 5. Then I need to update this to be ready. But the idea here is just with this command that I show you, I can publish my app. And when iOS is working, Android is working, then I publish the web version as well. And that's the release process. Usually takes like 20 minutes or 30 minutes because this step here is slow because Apple needs to process your app and then Fastlane keep asking, oh, the app is processed, the app, they are doing a pooling and we need to wait because I want to be sure that my app is going to at least be reviewed on Apple before I publish the web version because I don't want to have to revert and have to maybe undo a migration. Then I prefer to at least deliver it to Apple first, and then I can proceed with the release. But I don't wait Apple to approve. That would be the perfect process, like wait Apple to approve, and then you publish Android, and then you up the web. But I don't do this. Only if I have a big breaking change, then of course you need to prevent. And that's also important to remember, like as you are doing hot code push, if you change your API, it doesn't matter if it's a GraphQL API or if it's a method name or a publication name, that's going to break. And because your clients maybe are behind, and then you need to be aware of that. It's different from the web world that you just publish your code and your code is available for everybody. You have this middleman that maybe can hold your code for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Then you need to be aware of that as well. But that's my release process. Questions?
So test flight, is that a different process?
If you are using test flight?
Yeah, if you have a version you're trying to send to testers.
Yeah, you probably need to change because this way that I'm doing, it's publishing to production and also to test flight. But you probably, can you see here, publish a new beta, you probably can have less steps here. Maybe there are, let me see, I don't know if you really know this, but this is the upload. I know there is some part here that's saying to publish automatic release through. You should disable that, otherwise it's going to.
You just change the lane. I think instead of App Store, you change it to beta for iOS.
Yeah, it's basically the same idea here, right? You can change like in
Exactly the same
track, but you can change a flag, then it's not going to go into the last step.
Yeah, because the same build you use for uploading to App Store, you can promote it to production version. So the build is the same. Just you stop in the middle of the process, like you don't release it to review and all that.
Nice. I think the only other step that we do is we have a manual process in Xcode where we have to add a couple of sound files because we have custom sounds for push notifications and like in app. I haven't figured out how to make that like pulled from the from like the source code directories, I guess, yet.
But how do you do it today?
We just open the workspace in Xcode and then we have to add the sound files under, I think it's resources. And then
but the Cordova build override folder is not enough? Do you know about this folder here, the build override?
Yeah, we use it for Android. Not sure if we ran into issues when we were trying it before. I'll try it again.
Yeah, I think and you can also use Fastlane. Like Fastlane, you can write Ruby code to do custom task. I think they call actions. And then you can also create custom actions if you want to copy this. But these are the challenges that we need to try to address better in the mobile config. Like if you can support more cases in the mobile config, I think it would be good because like the idea with this talk here is just to open this conversation and show that it's possible. But right now, like we are talking like for more than 1 hour and it's a lot of knowledge that you need to have to be able to deliver this app. My idea is try to reduce this knowledge, like maybe in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you should be able to create a new app and publish. But we need to build yet a lot of tools. And the problem with mobile world that really annoys me, and even if you build everything in like 1 month, many parts will be broken because I don't know why, but Apple and Google, but more Apple, they break stuff all the time for the mobile.
Yeah, I think the only other issue we've run into is we have to reset the like the signing key somehow. There used to be an issue with Meteor where you had to set it to using like the legacy build process or something. Do you remember that?
But I don't think that's an issue. It is still an issue. I don't remember if you.
No, I think it's fixed now.
Yeah, I think it's fixed as well. Yeah, because
it was related to the old version of Cordova.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for some reason we still have to mess with the signing. Oh, yeah. When we open the workspace, for whatever reason, the one that's built by Meteor, if we just try to build it using Xcode immediately, then the signing fails. So we have to turn off, like we disable the automatic signing and then re-enable the automatic signing. And for whatever reason that makes it work. We don't actually change anything. It just works. Yeah, like signing release, if you uncheck that box and then
for me,
that.
sometimes this signing part's always like a mystery. And I don't know, like I'm not a native developer. Renaud, can you explain why you need to disable, enable checkbox for Apple to work?
Well, have you guys run into that?
I don't think I have, but I don't actually run it a lot before building it into an API. You can actually automate that with Fastlane if you want to. You can disable automatic sign and use a provisioning profile for building. So most of the times I'm only using the development debug build. But even in the development debug build, it also happens. You also have to enable and disable the checkbox because that seems like a bug.
Yeah, you probably can fix it. Maybe Meteor is removing the settings. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be something that we did locally too. I'm not sure. A lot of this, you kind of have to run, like make a test app and then, see if it still happens.
Yeah. Simple app would be good to confirm it.
I just want to show one more thing before we wrap up. It's how to debug your app from your machine when you are running. Just for the record here, because you're talking about a lot of different topics, then like if you have your app running in your device or in the simulator, like I have here, it's the iPod, and I just run right now from here. Then you can go to Safari in your MacBook, like you need to have a MacBook to develop with for iOS. Then you go to develop menu, and you go here, and then you can see like Bmark D is my app, and then you can see my device here, and you can select this web view, and then you start to get the console here, or you can even type anything as you do. No, I can't type. I don't know why. Okay, it's just slow. Like I'm not authenticated here, but if I was, then you can see like the Meteor object is here. And then that's very useful for debug to understand like what's going wrong. Then you can see the errors here. And it's very useful that you can, I'm changing like here. I don't know if I have any logs in my app. Oh, I don't know what is this error, but if it was, okay, I get the IP to do some logs because we work with money, then I need to log the IPs. Then it failed for some reason. And then that's very useful to debug this way. Then you can do exactly the same. Let me try here. With Android as well. You can go here Oops. More tools, remote device. Oh, it's deprecated? Okay. Okay, but I never used this UI, but I think it's going to work. Here I just open on Chrome, but if you open in the web view, it's going to be the same. But then you can also inspect your app here. And that's also another way that you can share your Android UI. And you can do the same, like you have Meteor here in the console and you're going to get the messages here. I'm even getting in the Android version, I'm logged in, then I get the user ID. And again, it's very powerful and a very effective way to debug issues. And one thing that I feel that people from the communities is doing a lot, it's running and testing the app in the app mode, like in the native part. But usually I almost never test my app in the native part, device. Like I just try to make sure I don't break it. And I just test one time. And I have like mocks APIs when I need to test some business flow. Like I implemented a feature in the past when I was working full time for Pathball, like a QR code reader. But I just tested the QR code reader one time, just one time in like 3-4 months of development, because I just create the same API using a promise to read from the device and to read from a mock API that was just an alert from the browser. And then I developed all the time just using the alert because I was sure the alert was using the same promise that it was using the device. Then if it's working one time, I don't need to run the device all the time because it's heavier, you need to have a device or you need to have a simulator running. Then that's also something that I would say for the community to try to just like use the native app when you really need it, because the experience to develop directly in the browser, for me at least, it's better. I don't know if others are doing the same or if you're running the device like every day.
We usually don't. We don't release a lot on the app stores. We rely on hot code push a lot. So it's mostly just when we have a new plugin that we want to take advantage of.
Okay. Yeah, because I see some guys on Slack sometimes complain about, oh, I'm running all the time. Maybe hot code push is failing. I'm wasting a lot of time. I don't know if we are like adding new features all the time, and because of that they need to test new plugins, or if they are just running the device all the time. Because usually I don't see any reason to run like every day. Of course, it's good if you have enough time to run every day on every device. It's okay, but if you don't need to do this if you don't want to. Okay, and if what I didn't mention in the beginning, maybe I should have mentioned, like I have another video just showing when you release Meteor 1.10, I did a short video showing how to create a new project and run on Android and iOS. And then if you are just new here and watching this video live or later, then it's better to watch this video first. It's the release 1.10 in Meteor YouTube channel. Then you can understand how to add the platform and how to run. Because of that, I skipped this part because we already have this video there. And here's more like how to really work in real apps. I think I covered everything that I was planning to cover. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, do you have any advice on automated testing on different platforms, like different devices?
I have not done this myself, but what you can do if you want to do this, like if you want to test the native plugins, you can get inspiration. It's breaking because of some stupid thing that I did last time, but it was working. Like it was broke this test here for a long time, and then it was fixed. I need to check what's going on here. But in this repo, that's the Meteor repo, they use like a plugin. Do you remember the name, Rena? It's Medicine. Let me see.
I think.
Like end-to-end testing?
Yeah. Then you can really test your Like it's
Paramedic
specific
is
for
a
Cordova. Sorry, what's the name? Do you remember?
Cordova Paramedic, if I'm not wrong.
Here, there is a folder. I'm looking for it.
Yeah, Paramedic.
Yeah, then like we have this test here, like it can test plugins, you can test like the native code. Maybe that's something useful. But again, like usually I don't change too much the native part. Then if you test one time, it's probably safe. But if you really want to write some tests, I think that's a good example that we have here. Like you can mock the server, you can do a lot of crazy shit. But of course, if you are going to test this deep, you need to learn a little bit about each platform, because then you need to also write some native code. But I think there are some tools that you pay, like it's not browser stack, but I think there is another company that you can just pay by hour. Then you have device, and I think they support like to implement scripts like Selenium or Cypress, and then you can run against your app. But I never use this service that I can recommend. But I know there are services available to do like Cypress tests with native apps, or you can do like this with Paramedic, that you can run the app. If you run this later in your machine, you are going to see like it starts the app and starts to do a lot of stuff and check if it's working or not. It's pretty good. I didn't know that we had this before I started to work with changing this plugin the last time.
I remember when those tests started working, and I think Ben was commenting. He added a comment about how amazing it was that the committer had gotten it working, because they never worked.
Yeah, the first time it worked, it was David here, and I also see this comment from Benjamin, and then later it was broken again, probably my mistake, and then it was working again. Then it's amazing because you can have some safety. But I think here is just because I changed the Swift version, but I need to check this. It was a long time ago, and I didn't see like this warning here. I need to check this.
One thing I use it for testing on different devices, Genymotion. You can kind of pay for some time to use different Android device and test in real device, because actually the behavior you get on simulator is really different from what you get on different device. And I think Genymotion is a good platform for that. Seems like they added automated tests. Maybe it's worth a shot.
That was called Genymotion. Okay.
Yeah. They also had a pretty good emulator back in those times. You're mute.
Felipe, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, guys. Just to open here also what we are talking about before, that was the Cordova Paramedic plugin. And we also have this fork from Renan, the Apple OAuth, that you can use to configure your authentication with Apple. That's required now, or you don't provide authentication for any platform, or you need to include Apple ID as an option. And that's also another fork that you should use with this together to authenticate with Apple. And the experience for the user, do you have the video, Renan? There? It's very good because it's, again, like that are the small piece that makes your app like really native, because they can just use the Face ID to authenticate into your app. And for the users, that's something that I learned from 2016. Like for the user, it doesn't matter if it's developing using web technologies or native technologies. Like I know a lot of people in the community are against like this idea, but for the user, it's not important. Like for the user, it's just like everything is an app, and if it works well, the user is happy. They don't know if it's web technology or not, if the app is well developed. You have the video? Did you send me or no? Renan? Okay. No, it's not here anymore.
I'm trying to find it. My computer.
Okay, but it's just like the experience. If you have Apple, you know how it works. Like, but it's the same, but using Cordova in web technology, and that's great. You can save a lot of money developing like this. Okay, guys, I think we covered everything. That was the idea. Sorry about the problem in the beginning with the Zoom hackers. I don't know how to call them. Any questions to wrap up?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
See you in the next live. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Maybe.
Bye.